In this next portion of the book project, we're going to be setting keyframes to animate different parts of our layers. Make sure you have your selection tool, which is the arrow tool in the top of your tool panel, and select the fish layer, which should be the topmost layer. Notice that when you do this, you get a simple little bounding box around this area. By the way, if you need to see this, you can zoom in or out at any time by clicking on the zoom area down here. I'm at 100%, but you may need to zoom in or out depending on how your computer is set up. There we go. When setting keyframes, the first thing we need to do is to set our starting position. I'm going to select my fish and drag them to the right until they are off the composition area. I can't see them, but I can still see their bounding box. To set a keyframe, go down to your timeline, twirl open the key layer by clicking on the little arrow icon, and you can see there's different ways we can transform this. The position, scale, rotation. We're going to be changing the position, and so we need to make sure we can see the position stopwatch. Also, make sure your current time indicator, which is this blue line, is set to 0 seconds on your timeline. To add a starting keyframe, click on the stopwatch. Notice a little triangle or diamond appears right here. Next, we're going to move our current time to 8 seconds. So I'm going to click on my current time indicator and drag it all the way to the 8-second mark, so 8.00F. From here, we can now click on our fish and drag them all the way to the left-hand side. Notice that when you do this, it adds a little motion line from the starting point to the end, and it also adds a keyframe to indicate where you've changed on your timeline. If we were to return the current playtime back to here, you can see by scrubbing it over, this shows the animation in progress. Now, to make them move instead of along a straight path, let's set our current time indicator to 2 seconds. We're going to click on our fish and drag it up, and you can see how this is going to start to curve the path. Let's go to 4 seconds and drag them down, and then go to 6 seconds and drag them up. So this will give it a nice curved path. Again, if you click on your timeline, the current time indicator, you can scrub over it to get an idea of how this will animate. If you press the space bar, this will automatically play through the entire thing. Another way you can preview your compositions is by choosing the preview panel at the very top, and this will also give you the ability to play, fast forward, or move back and forth multiple frames. Now let's animate the shark. Return back down to your timeline of your layers, scroll down until we can choose the shark PNG. Now, since this is hiding underneath multiple different layers, let's turn on the solo layer, which is the first little icon on this layer. Doing this will turn off all of the other layers so that you can just see this one layer that you're working on. I want to make sure my current time indicator is set to 0 seconds, and I have the shark layer selected. In order to quickly open up just the position properties, I'm going to press the P key on my keyboard, and notice that it only gives me the position stopwatch. From here, I can move my shark off the left-hand side, and I can click the position stopwatch to quickly add just a keyframe there. Using this keyboard shortcut is a great way to get to just the part you want to animate without having to open multiple different sub-layers. Now let's move our current time indicator to 8 seconds. And with it over here, let's move our shark all the way over to the right-hand side. We can now click on the solo again to turn back on all of our areas, and let's click our time indicator and back it up so that you can get an idea of what it looks like when we press play. You can see this image sequence has the shark animating as well as having the fish animating as well. This is a good point to go to File and let's save our document. Now let's go through and animate the title sequence. Locate the Wonders of the Deep title Illustrator layer, and this is the first one here. We don't want it to start appearing on our screen right at 0 seconds. We want it to start appearing right at 1 second. So we need to trim this. One way you can trim it is by moving your cursor to the edge of where the timeline is, and you get a double arrow. You can then click on it and drag until it matches up right at 1 second. And if yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. This means that when the playhead scrubs through, it will appear at that time. So the word Wonders pops up right there. Now we want to have the word Wonders scale up. So with this layer selected, press the S key to open the scale transformation. With our playhead set to 1 second, right where it's beginning at, we can click the scale stopwatch to add a keyframe. We're going to scale it down, so instead of it being 100% to 0%. You can use your scrub by clicking and dragging, or I just like to type in a 0 and it automatically scales everything down to 0%. Next, we can move our current time indicator to 2 seconds. We can return to our scale, and let's set this back up to 100%. When I hit Tab, it types it in both of them. Notice that I have 2 keyframes, and the animation scales up the word Wonders. Next, we want to animate the word Deep to appear or start animating as soon as the word Wonders stops animating. To do this, let's locate the Deep title sequence, which is the first one at the very top of our timeline. I'm going to set my time indicator right at 2 seconds, and we want to trim this timeline right where our time indicator is at. A good keyboard shortcut to know is to hold down the Option key if you're on a Mac or an Alt key if you're on the Windows, and the Open Brackets key. Doing this automatically trims it right to start where your time indicator is at. Also, with this layer open, we can press the P key to open the Position Keyframe Stopwatch. Now we want this to stop right here at 4 seconds. So I'm going to move my time indicator over to the 4-second position, click on the Position Stopwatch, then I'm going to scrub back to the 2-second position, and I'm going to move the word Deep down. So this is going to start it animating at 2 seconds and then end at its final resting place at 4 seconds. So when I scrub through, this is what it looks like. Finally, let's have the words of the and Mondays fade in. To do this, we're going to animate the opacity of both of these layers. Going down to our layers timeline, choose the of the Deep and press the T button. This will bring up the opacity. Think of T as transparency as well. That's why it's a little bit different from there. Let's set the timeline for this one to be at 3 seconds. We can click the opacity of it, and at 3 seconds we want this to be at 0% opacity. So let's set our opacity all the way down to 0. From here, let's fade it back up. Let's move our time indicator to 4 seconds, and then we can return to our opacity, click on the little scrubby, and bring it all the way back up to 100%. Now when I animate this, you can see the opacity of the is fading in. Let's do the same thing for Mondays. Let's have the time for Mondays fade up starting at 4 seconds to 5 seconds. So let's choose the time layer, press the T keyboard shortcut, make sure your time indicator is set to 4 seconds. With this layer selected, click on the opacity and set the opacity for the time to be down to 0. Now we can move our playhead over to the 5-second mark, which is right about here. Go back to the opacity and bring it up to 100%. Now let's scrub back and see what all this looks like once it's animated. Plays in, comes up, Deep, and of the times in nicely. That's great. Again, this is a good saving point, so let's go to File and Save. Before we finish this last part of the exercise, the last thing we want to do is to add some keyframe easing. If you notice that as we played through this composition, everything tends to animate at the consistent speed. And in real life, nothing moves at a consistent speed. Instead, we want to have things slowly and smoothly ease into their movement and then slowly come to a stop. To do this, we're going to add easy ease to all of our keyframes. Let's take this one layer at a time. We'll go down to our deep title sequence, click on the word position to select all of the keyframes that is in the position timeline. To add easy ease, you can go up to Animation, down to Keyframe Assistant, and choose Easy Ease. Doing this is going to convert your keyframes from little diamonds to little hourglass shapes. Now when you play through, it's going to start slow, go pick up speed, and then end slowly. Repeat this process for all of the other animations that we've done. So in our title sequence, we'll go to the next layer and choose Opacity. With all of the keyframes selected, go up to Animate, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. Choose the opacity for the time, Animation, Assistant, Easy Ease, and then let's do the wonders, Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. You only need to apply this to the title sequence, and you don't need to do it to each of the fish or the shark that we've created. This will end the second part of this book exercise. We'll go up to File and Save. In the next part, we're going to talk about adding some special effects.